Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with turkey tamale pie. That's right, I'm going to show you how to make a tamale pie out of leftover turkey. Because let's face it, no matter how moist and delicious your roast turkey turned out, the leftovers can be a little bit dry and uninteresting, which is the exact opposite of what you're going to experience with this. In fact, this came out so well, even if you don't have any leftover turkey, you should roast one just to use for this, and maybe make a few sandwiches, but mostly for this. So with that, let's go ahead and get started by sauteing a diced onion in a little bit of olive oil over medium-high heat, along with, of course, the traditional giant pinch of salt. And what we'll do is cook these stirring for a few minutes until they just start to turn translucent. And all that means is that those pieces of onion are going to go from firm and white to slightly softer in this. Okay, we're just basically taking that raw edge off. And then once our onions are looking a little something like that, we'll go ahead and toss in a whole bunch of diced peppers. And this time I went with a red bell pepper, plus a couple beautiful dark green poblano peppers. But of course, use whatever you want. I mean, you guys are, after all, the schleppers of your peppers. So whatever you carry back from the store will work. But regardless of which you use, we'll go ahead and season that up with some freshly ground black pepper, some ground cumin, and a nice big pinch of dry oregano. And what we'll do is stir that all together and cook it for about 2 minutes until our peppers just start to soften up, at which point we're going to add what might be the most important ingredient, 1 can of whole chipotle peppers packed in adobo sauce. And if you're not familiar, these are basically whole red jalapeno peppers that have been smoked over hot coals, or at least that's what the brochure says, and then packed in an amazingly flavorful chili sauce. And what we'll do is go ahead and break those up and stir them in with our spatula. And fair warning, those things are pretty spicy, which, by the way, explains why you're not going to see me add any cayenne to this. All right, that stuff's going to provide plenty of heat. And what we'll do as soon as that's all been broken up and stirred in is turn off our heat and reserve that pan of goodies while we move on to prep our turkey, which most likely will be some leftover dry Thanksgiving turkey. And what we'll do is make sure we remove the bones and skin before cutting this up into like 1/4-inch cubes. And what you're seeing here are the remnants to a very unsuccessful honey roast turkey recipe, which came out very bland and unexciting. But hey, at least it was dry. The good news, however, is that it's perfect for a recipe like this. So I went ahead and cubed up about 3 or 4 cups. And once that's set, we'll go ahead and add that to our pan of onions and peppers, along with a whole bunch of sharp cheddar cheese, or any melty cheese. But cheddar is the official recommendation. And then we will follow that with a jar or can of red enchilada sauce from the store. Do not make that yourself. I mean, you could, but don't. Plus, I don't think I've ever posted a recipe for enchilada sauce, which we probably should. But anyway, we'll finish up with some salt, as well as some chicken broth. That is, you might be able to see I used to rinse out my jar of enchilada sauce. And we'll dump that in and stir everything together before transferring that into whatever casserole dish we're going to use. And please note how runny and loose this mixture is. Okay, we want to make sure we start with a lot of liquid, so once this bakes, it stays a little bit saucy. All right, a dry tamale pie is not fly, as they say. And then what we'll do once that's been transferred in is move on to the last major component, a very, very thin cornbread batter. And that's going to start with some cornmeal. And I'm using kind of a medium grind, but fine cornmeal will also work. And then we're also going to toss in some self-rising flour, which is nothing more than flour with a baking powder and salt milled into it. And then we're also going to need a little bit of white sugar, as well as, of course, a little bit of salt. And then what we'll want to do is take a whisk and give this all a mix, so that all those ingredients are nicely combined before we add our wet ingredients. And by wet ingredients, I mean a couple large eggs, as well as some nice cold fresh whole milk. And that's it. We'll just take our whisk and mix this all together to form, like I said, a very thin batter. And yes, in case you're wondering, we do usually use buttermilk when we make cornbread, which gives it a nice little tanginess. But here, with this particular filling, I think something a little bit on the sweeter side will work better. But having said that, either one will work. And then once we have that mixed up, we'll go ahead and ladle that carefully over our turkey filling. And by applying it this way, we're going to hopefully get a nice even layer, since if we just dump this in, it might be thicker in some spots than others. So it really is better to take an extra minute and sort of ladle that over carefully. And the reason we want that so thin is that I'm not trying to make a turkey chili with cornbread baked on top. Okay, we want to get a little bit closer to the texture of an actual tamale, which is much denser and moister. So I do realize it looks a little watery, But you'll see, once this bakes, it's going to be perfect. Oh, and please note, we have our casserole dish set over a sheet pan, because this is almost always going to bubble over. So make sure you put something under your dish. And then what we'll do to finish this off is go ahead and scatter over the rest of our cheese, which, by the way, is why we didn't add any butter to the batter. Oh yeah, this is a no butter batter, because the butter fat in that cheese is going to provide all we need. And that's it. Once our cheese has been applied to the top, we can go ahead and transfer this into the center of a 375-degree oven for about 45 minutes to an hour, or until it's beautifully browned and probably bubbling over, and our cornbread-ish topping has cooked through, which if you want you can test with a toothpick, and it should come out clean. Okay, if it comes out dirty and it has a bunch of wet batter on it, put it back in for a few more minutes. But mine was perfect. And at this point I usually tell you to let things rest for a few minutes, but with this you really don't have to. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece and serve that up. And right here you can get a great look at our still beautifully saucy filling, which is why we really do want that stuff nice and juicy before this goes in the oven. And then by all means, feel free to eat this as is. But I like to finish mine off with a nice dollop of sour cream, which not only looks pretty, but also provides a contrast in taste and temperature. Plus, I also like to show off my dolloping skills. And that's it. I finished up with a little bit of chopped cilantro, and my leftover turkey tamale pie was ready to enjoy. So I grabbed a spoon and dug in, and I could not have been happier with how this came out. Okay, you know that thing they shined in people's eyes in that movie Men in Black to erase their memories? This tamale pie is that for dry turkey. Okay, you're going to forget you even roasted a turkey. And above and beyond that highly seasoned, super flavorful, very moist filling, we also of course have that slightly sweet topping that is basically halfway between a classic cornbread and that softer, much moister, traditional tamale dough. So I'm not officially saying I hope your turkey's a little overcooked and people don't eat that much, so that you have plenty of leftovers to make this. But unofficially I am saying that. So I really did love everything about this. So whether you end up making this with actual leftover turkey, or you end up cooking some turkey just to make this, or of course just substitute with some chicken, which would totally work, I really do hope you give this delicious tamale pie a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.